Y'all remember that game called V Rising that lasted like a solid 3 seconds? Peppertron remembers. Either way, welcome back, everybody. Today we're actually talking about a slightly obscure game, and the fact that it was obscure only because it really fell apart after like 2 months. V Rising, that game that came out of nowhere, absolutely lit a firestorm, and then immediately fizzled out afterwards. A game that was so well crafted, and yet somehow managed to have zero lasting power whatsoever. Well, I really shouldn't say that. I play a game like Crossout that has like 0 people watching it or actively consuming that content anymore, and yet you want me to crap on V Rising. But the reason why I'm actually talking about V Rising today is that it's a weird game in the sense that I played it a lot with my friends for a long time trying to get places and experience the whole game. And yet, honestly, halfway through it, everyone just got bored of it and stopped playing it immediately. It also doesn't help that if you stop playing the game, it also just completely destroys your castle and all of your progress. So you're like, well, guess I ain't playing the game anymore. It's like one of those games where it incentivizes you to play a bunch, but then if you stop, you don't get anything after that. It's like, all right, cool. Well, guess I ain't doing that anymore. But it's not necessarily the fact that it has that almost FOMO-esque element where if you stop playing it, there is that potential that all your progress is going to be resetted, and at that point, it's just, lost cost, and you throw it away because it's like, why play something that's going to waste my time? But it's not only just that, it's also just the aspect of the game itself where it's basically you gear up to face one boss, you face it, and then that boss maybe has 1 or 2 movesets that are vaguely slightly different, but honestly you can kind of treat all bosses relatively the same, and then after that you're good. Like, it almost feels like a rinse and repeat when it comes to every single boss, some sort. Like, if you played the Battle Right game, then V Rising is going to pretty much play exactly like that. It has the exact same feel, which makes sense, it's made by the same people. But the issue is that when you're trying to engage somebody and every single boss feels very, I don't want to say distinct, but lacking in distinction. Like, they all feel very somewhat samey. You can play with them all somewhat samey. Like, there isn't like a huge diversity in terms of their approaching of each combat style. You kind of just like slowly rotate and dance around the outside of it, and then you basically defeat all bosses. And each one takes about like, an hour to get to because of the distance to travel, the buffs to acquire, the gear to repair, the timing of the day to make sure that you're the appropriate time level. Make sure you have high quality blood so it doesn't take you, 30 minutes to do a single boss. And rinse and repeat for like 60 or so bosses. After like maybe an hour or two, that formula gets, like, that stuff gets boring real quickly. And if you're playing solo, Godspeed to you guys, but please keep on that resource grind. Turn that shit up to like a plus times 4 times 5 or whatever, just so that you don't have to grind nearly as much, because holy crap was that boring. And I think that's the main issue. It's just that this game does not have a lot of replay value. Play it once, played it in its entirety. There isn't a whole lot of like extra diversity to go down. The gearing is incredibly linear. The weapons almost play exactly the same, except one's for wood, one's for stone, one's for plants, one's for undead, one's for living, and even then that's level of optimization that's not really necessary 99.9999999% of circumstance. So there's no reason to even continue playing it again. You've played it once, you've played it for like the first 5 bosses, you've experienced basically the entirety of the game. And the same thing even comes to like their abilities too, because half the abilities feel and play exactly the same. Sure, they have different status effects, but that does not change the feel. Sure, your thing does ice damage versus shadow damage versus fire damage. 2 of them have a dot over time. 1 of them freezes. Sure, they kind of play differently, but like not to a significant portion, especially when a lot of the times the bosses or mobs can be immune to it. It's just, why? And it's like, oh, which shield do I want? Do I want shield 1 that fires projectiles, shield 1 that fires a different projectile, or shield 3 that someone's adds that distract the boss really easily? It's like, I'm not sure which one I'm going to use, but I guarantee you it's going to be that skeleton boy one. Not to mention, too, that the game itself doesn't really have a large amount of content outside of its boss grind. Beyond that, it's fairly standard, like, go around, collect resources, make yourself stronger for the next boss, and do that. Like, the only element in this game that makes it slightly more interesting is the PvP element, but that's literally the most basic form inside every single game out there. And even then, the PvP itself was incredibly limited because you had to do the stone golem, and even then, a lot of the servers restrict PvP times to certain times of the day. So a lot of the time, it just doesn't feel like it's like cool. I guess that's an aspect of it, but it feels so refined as to almost be lacking in shine. Is a way to put it without really using too many words. That's just kind of how I felt about playing V Rising and why I actually stopped playing V Rising after a certain amount of time. Sure, it's a great game, very well polished and very aesthetically pleasing and all that, and I'm sure it'll have some layer of DLC at some point down the line that'll renew interest maybe at a 10th of the level it was before fizzling out and then making a brand new project that is basically going to be Battle Right Reskin #2. Although, who knows, maybe they'll pull a CD Projekt Red and work on a dead game for way too long to the point where it might pull a No Man's Sky and come back out from the shadows, but probably won't. But who knows? It'll be interesting to see how this game actually turns out or fizzles away. But that's just kind of how it is. It fizzled right now. It's not even that popular in the Twitch categories. It's all of its viewership is basically gone. Like, probably the Google Trends for this has gone basically to zero. So yeah, that's kind of what you get at this point. But what do you guys think about V Rising? Is that a game you guys were interested in? What made you stop playing it, or what makes you continue playing it to even this day? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.